here to discuss all things NRL and anything sports related. Please give a warm Aussie g'day to the footy fanatic and America's own Corey Jackson in Outside the Sheds.
Greetings and salutations and welcome back to Outside the Sheds. Yes, Shedheads, this is your Shedadamus. This is probably the worst voice that I've ever had doing any type of live recording, anything in the history of my life. So this is not a fill-in host. This is your Shedda. But it has been a rough couple of days here in the bunker. We had tornadoes 2 days ago, and I woke up this morning to a very, very sick dog that I had to take care of. So it has been a little bit rough. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. You may have a couple pauses that you'll have to deal with me as I take a few drinks to try to keep this thing rolling, if you know what I mean. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and you're always in the fight. So that's where we're at right now. So let's kick off round 9, Magic Round. What a round. That's all I can say. What a round we got to experience. We're going to get a full breakdown of some of your Shedda's probably best moments, things that you want to, really take in from this round that just happened. But let's just go over the scores to kick this thing off. Sharks 28, Eels 18. To kick off Magic Round, the Sharkies behind another Stone Street special, another double for Stoney. They diffuse the Eels and some of that Moses magic. You know, the Fox did get a double, which was impressive, but that, folks, was maybe Nico Hines' best match we've seen recently. So it was good to see Nico get back into the flow again. We haven't seen it for a while, but I think we all know the type of player Nico is. And we got to see it again in some prime form again. You know, he's still letting Trendle do a lot of the kicking, but Nico started to look a little bit more comfortable, and that's what we really need him to be. Roosters 36, Dolphins 26. The Chookies make it 2 in a row and hand the Finns their second loss in a row. Really strange game all the way around. The Chooks, you know, there's something about this young Sydney Roosters club. I don't know if Robbo's dialed into the nobody believes in you phase, but they continue to produce, they continue to play good footy and kind of surprise people. And you wonder if we're getting ready to get back to a Finns club that is starting to do that roller coaster up and down. You know, the Hammer's playing good footy. He had 2 tries in this game as well. But you really start to wonder if the Finns have enough to really crack that top 8 this year. I think they have the team to do it, but they have to have the consistency to make this happen, and I don't know if they're able to pull that off at this current juncture. Knights 30, Rabbitohs 4. Fletcher Sharp ending the scoring drought up in the Hunter, even though it was not in the Hunter, it was at Suncorp. But 3 tries on his 21st birthday. You can't beat that. The Chooks, you know, it is impressive to me that the Knights, they always, right before you're about ready to really flip the switch off and say goodnight, they get a good victory. They run into a Rabbitohs squad that, truthfully, they have so many injuries right now. They just are not able to play that full footy that you expect from a Clint Eastwood club, right? But they're still trying to fight, but they just didn't have enough. You know, they really made Newcastle look like the better team. They made Newcastle look like, really like they're a team that hasn't had any type of problem scoring at all, and we know that's not the case. So a good victory for the boys for the Hunter, but it just leaves a lot of questions if South Sydney can get over all of these injuries. And that's the thing about it. Can they fully get through? Warriors 30, Cowboys 26. This victory makes it 5 in a row for the Waz. I got to tell you something. Was that just magical or what, watching that match? The Waz crowd was just, it was off the charts. It was something that was tough to behold. You know, Shawnee Johnson said before the game that he was really excited to see the Waz crowd in full throat, full voice. A lot better throat and voice than me right now. But he was not joking whatsoever. The Waz lived up to the hype. They played some really, really good football. And I think this was one of the games of the round, personally, probably between the Raiders and the Storm and this one. But you got a Cowboys team that's playing some good footy right now as well. But to me, it just really came down to Luke Metcalf. This guy has really stepped into Sean Johnson's number 7 jersey. He's become a leader of that team. Fletch and Hindy were by the field doing a call for KO, and they said they really didn't expect to hear Luke Metcalf talk that much to the club and guide guys around by voice. And so you really know that he's embraced this new role, and it's just good to see. It's good to see. But this team is hot. This team, you feel, can beat pretty much any club right now, besides the hoodoo of playing down in Melbourne. But they're a strong club, and I think that they're going to be possibly a top 4 side if they keep going like this, because they just play sound, thorough football, and they play incredible defense when they need to as well. Tigers 34, Dragons 28. In a match, truthfully, that's going to be remembered more for a not try than a try, because I'm going to tell you, that bomb that Jay Desua did, where everybody in the building thought the Dragons were about ready to score a try, to within 25 seconds, them give up a try to Drain Bula, was I guess you could say jaw-dropping, like I just did right there. It changed the entire complexion of the match. Changed right then. And I don't know if I've ever seen that in that illustrious of a moment, where one club was about ready to celebrate right before half, and instead they are walking into the sheds with their head down. And that was the extent. That was how pivotal that moment was right then. Because after that, the Tigers just had enough to get across the line. The Red V fought back. They did what they could. But, man, I don't think I will get that image out of my head for a very, very long time. And that's a moment they're going to be showing at the grand final when they're reliving the season, that bomb try. It's a moment that it's going to take a very, very mentally tough player to try to flush that and to not think about what a big moment and what a big time that was that they were not able to come over the top of. But Tigers get another big victory, sets up for a big showdown in Melbourne this coming week. So hats off to all the people in the jungle. Bulldogs 38, Titans 18. The Dogs of War rebound after their terrible loss up at Suncorp. And, well, they hold serve at Suncorp because, you know, behind their favorite son, and we all know who that is, the great Jacob Carraz with the treble, this team they're just special. They're playing the footy that you know Cameron Ciraldo wants them to play. They attack when they need to attack, and they play defense like an old school Dogs of War, where they want to just get in the grind and want to get in the fight. I sounded like Wolfman Jack at that last moment, but anyway. If you're a fan in Belmore right now, besides beating on a drum, this team has got to make you so proud, because there was no hanging of heads after last week. A lot of coaches say that they like it when their teams get a loss when they're riding really, really, really high, because it brings them back to earth a little bit. So even though Cameron Ciraldo never wants to lose, I think it was a perfect time for them to lose, and to lose that way, because it really let him drive home what this team really needs to do. And they proved it. They proved it by really just dismantling the Titans, and it makes what's going on, unfortunately for the Gold Coast Titans, even more under the spotlight with the David Fafita happenings and all that stuff, and Desi Hasler being under the pump up there. So great victory for the Bulldogs, but more misery for the Gold Coast Titans. Panthers 32, Broncos 8. The reigning premiers, they may have been up against the ropes. They may have got that standing 8 count. But guess what? Just like Ali, they bounced off the ropes and they put a knockout right to the jaw of the Broncos. That, Shedheads, was an epic moment, I think, in the season of the Penrith Panthers. This club really showed something, because a lot of people did not pick them. You know, the Broncos are playing in front of their faithful, in their barn, in their yard, and Nathan Cleary and those guys went up there and showed what they're made of, and that they are far from being done this season, because that was their best performance easily of the year, even surpassing what they did in Vegas. So you know that they've got to be, Coach Cleary's got to be very, very happy with his boys, and it's something for them to build off of, because I think if they can just turn and get that victory against the North Queensland Cowboys this coming week, you've got a very, very dangerous team heading into the Origin round. So good victory for the champs. They're back off the mat. We'll see where it goes from there. And then finally, Raiders 20, Storm 18. The Baby Greens claim their 5th scalp in a row. And even with a little bit of help from Jared Sutton, with a couple of, I didn't want to go on a long diatribe about this, but after the great round that we had in Magic Round, it really was, I don't know, I think it really just put the spotlight on a guy that sometimes some people say likes to see himself on television and hear his own voice, because there was a couple of times in that game that I thought Jared Sutton was letting the game get away from him. And that is something you never want to have happen when you're an official. I know he's an experienced referee, but there was just some calls right there. And I don't think anybody wanted to see a penalty be the thing that decided the game in Golden Point. Both teams had played too well for it to happen like that. It was cool to see the chip over the top by Kyle Weeks, to show that the speed this guy has, because those are two Ferraris right there, Weeks and Pappenhausen. Now, you can't say that it was a fair race, because Weeks was the one that instigated it with the chip over the top. So he had a chance to get to second gear before Pappy was even out of the blocks. But I told you guys a few weeks ago on this podcast, watching the Raiders live in Vegas, they're special. They're fast. They attack on the perimeter really, really strong. And they're just coming into their own. And I'm going to talk about those boys, those fellas, a little bit. But an incredible match. Those Baby Greens, they're a special club. They're a special, special club. So anyway, great Magic Round. But what I want to do, Shedheads, I want to go into a deeper dive on Magic Round. And it's something that I really want to do, because I've been to the 2013 Grand Final. I've been to the Auckland Nines. I've been to Vegas both years. And now I really have something that I've got to put on my bucket list, and that is going for the weekend up to Bris Vegas and go to Magic Round. I want to walk from Caxton Street all the way to the stadium. The good thing is I won't be walking in a Blues jersey, so I won't be harassed or things thrown at me. I'll just be walking with the people. I'll just be it'll be like Moses walking towards the stadium with his flock. But it is something that even some of the guys that are right there at ground zero are still a little bit blown away how big this keeps getting time and time again. I am in total agreement with a lot of the pundits that say that it should not go anywhere. I know there's talk that that they possibly might want to, have it be in Perth the year that the Bears start in 27. But I just think that that whole scene, the whole vibe of Brisbane and the energy that comes out of that city for rugby league, I think that it would be a real loss to the game if we moved it from Brisbane to anywhere, personally. But I've got to tell you, I've got some incredible moments that I want to just bring out right now. I want to talk about from Magic Round that I think there are some keys that we could pay attention to that might affect the rest of the season. I think what really made Magic Round so special this year was the thing that we were most worried about going into it. And that was going to be how the refs and how the bunker might affect the style of play, the rate of play, all of that type of stuff. And we did not get that whatsoever, except for the last game, right? The one that everyone's going to remember, right? But they put those whistles away. They let the players on the field decide the outcome of the game. I'm sorry about that, Melbourne Storm fans, but in most of the games they did. But it was refreshing. I don't know if I've watched people be more excited to talk about a round than this round, because I think everybody was so worried about what it could have turned into if the whistle started getting blown. But let's go over this number that I thought was really, really crazy. There were only 5 sin bins for the entire weekend, right? So, okay, that's still 5 sin bins. But if you look at it, round 8, there was a record-breaking 18 sin bins in 8 games. So we're down 13 sin bins. I'll take that every day of the week, and then twice on Sunday. That was huge. But let's not call it a crackdown or anything, okay? Let's not call round 8 a crackdown. We wouldn't want to do that. We wouldn't want to get the powers that be to think that the word crackdown really is still out there at all, right? But that to me was what made the weekend so special, is that we got back to just playing straight up footy, and there was not tons of breaks. There wasn't tons of whistles. There wasn't tons of slowdowns. It was a more of a free flowing game. But it still made you sometimes like hold your breath at times where you're like, oh, are they going to call something there? And I think probably around game 3, everyone kind of could calm down. And I think we got the feeling that they were going to let these guys do what they do best and play some good footy. The champs. I said it a couple seconds ago, but it was so refreshing to see the Penrith Panthers. Now, it may not have been refreshing for the rest of the other teams in the competition, but it was refreshing for a rugby league fan like your Shedadamus to see the champs come back and be the champs. Now, here's the thing. You don't have to be a Penrith fan. You don't have to support Penrith. You don't have to, have a pink jersey that says Oak on it. You don't have to have any of that stuff. But when you know a team has greatness in them, you want to see them lose the championship, lose the crown, whatever you want to say. But you want to see them lose that playing their best footy, right? You want to see a team knock them or dethrone them saying we beat the champ. And we have not been these first, 7, 8 rounds. We'll say 7 because they didn't look too bad in Vegas. But you just did not see that same team. There just wasn't the same thing. And I know a lot of it was from combinations, changes, player loss. And tell me any other team that would lose the amount of players that Penrith has lost that would still be able to do what they did. But the moment I knew that this team was back on track was a couple things. One, Nathan Cleary was back to being his brilliant self. He scored that try that eerily looked similar to the 2023 Grand Final try. Really similar, kind of scary similar. But I knew right then, Nathan, like I said, I tell people all the time, that 2023 grand final, the last 20 minutes when Nathan put the Panthers on his back and said, I will not lose today, and he just started being a maestro, that's what we saw. The kick and chase that he started to do and being the first guy down the field to inflict tackle, he was going to go out on his own shield. And that, to me, that just pumps me so up. And I don't care what team I'm watching. When I see individual greatness of a player that says, I'm in, follow me, that's stuff of legend, right? That is stuff of legend. So we saw that. We saw him kick another 40-20, which, this guy's boot was on point. It's just, there's things about a great player that if you've watched him for multiple years where he's back. He's attacking the line and he's deep digging into the line. All those things open up everybody else. And we got to see that. And we got to see Nathan at his best again. And, that makes a lot of people nervous. A lot of people. Next, Blaise Talangi. Blaise Talangi, to me, there was just remember, it was less than a year ago that Blaise Talangi was the talk of the NRL, that he was getting ready to be lost by the Eels, and that Penrith had scooped him up. And, well, that happened, but he just hadn't come out of the box. And yes, he had surgery in the offseason, but he still didn't really look like he'd embraced that 6 jersey, that everybody thought that when the season started that Blaise Talangi was going to run out on the field in the 6, and it didn't happen. But he's looking comfortable in it. He's now starting to attack the line, and he's got that freakish speed too that I think we're going to see in these coming rounds. And I'm going to tell you right now, Shedheads, mark this on your calendar. Watch Blaise Talangi explode during the origin period. Watch him know that his team needs him. And that's the thing about him. He's one of those players that has the ability to have greatness. And when the chips are down and Nathan's probably off at origin camp, watch Blaise Talangi step in and play some incredible footy. And I really think that's getting ready to happen because I'm just watching slowly week after week. He's getting more and more comfortable. And he's getting more and more comfortable because he's understanding the Penrith system. And that is what you need to do to perform in the Penrith system. You've got to understand it. You've got to understand when it's time to run, when it's time to pass, all that. You guys know this, right, Shedheads? This isn't your first rodeo either. But he's seeming comfortable in that number 6 jersey. And you're never going to see Ivan, take a deep breath or anything like that. But deep down, he's excited. He's excited because he knows the type of footy this young man can play, and I think we're getting ready to watch it. Next, Dylan Edwards. Dylan Edwards has been beat up. He's had off-season surgery as well. He just does not seem like the Dylan Edwards that we're so used to seeing, the guy that just is nonstop motion, right? So the hairstyle's changed just a little bit, but that game that we watched against the Broncos felt so much like vintage Edwards. And the thing that I think is so funny that he's raring and kind of coming into form, 3 weeks away from origin. And it's now putting pressure on Laurie Daly. Are you going to take an informed Tedesco that's probably maybe playing some of his best football that he's played close to ever? Or are you going to take the incumbent? Are you going to stay with Dylan Edwards? And I think all of that's going to come down to the spine. What type of spine Laurie wants to run? Does he want to put, Jerome Hughes and Nathan? Because if that's the case, Dylan Edwards is going to be out back there. But if you put Mitchell Moses, who's incredible friends with Teddy, in there with Nathan, well, then there's a chance you could take Teddy. So I think so much of it has to come down to the choice of the fullback position from who you're going to put in the halves and who's going to be paired together. But that being said, none of that makes a difference on how well Dylan Edwards played on Saturday. He looked like he's actually feeling good. He looks like he's not playing with pain. And that makes all the difference in the world, us getting the best of Dylan Edwards. So, let's go to something else because it all comes from this game as well, Shedheads. And that question is, are the Brisbane Broncos in real trouble? And I'm going to say we're right on the fence. We're straddling that fence where you just don't want to drop any farther because some private areas could get injured. But I think it's really funny that they're 5-4 now. They've lost three out of their four last matches. And, you know, the talk and the scuttlebutt over the offseason was that the powers that be, the bigwigs, the people that we don't see every week, thought that the Broncos did not have the mental fortitude and weren't being coached up in the mental capacity to actually take them to the promised land. I don't know if they thought that Kevy was a little too easy on them. Was Kevy too much of a player's coach? I don't know. You'd have to ask those fellas what they thought there. But because of that, they showed Kevy the door, and in comes the Master Sergeant, Madge McGuire. Everybody knows that Madge is not going to have any problems peeling paint off walls to get his point across. And what does Madge do? He gets the boys out there and he beats the hell out of them in a military-style camp to start the season. Hey, I'm not going to say anything about that because Penrith runs some tough preseason camps as well. And a lot of times they've had a military structure to them as well. Okay, so that being that. So if it's not the toughness of the preseason, they're definitely bringing Madge in because of his ability to harden his players, to make them mentally tough, to make them be able to think when everything is at its worst or toughest part, right? But right now, that is not looking like the case at all. The mental lapses that have been shown by this club, I have to say, rival some of the stuff that people were crucifying Kevy about. They have not been mentally tough this year. They've blown some clubs out and some teams out, but they just haven't. They haven't felt like the toughest team on the field mentally, especially in tight games or in games when they're down. And that's got to be a concern. That's got to be a concern if you're a Broncos fan. It's got to be a concern for management. But think about this for a second. Is it a concern for the players? Because no matter what players say right now, because of the phone, social media, blah, 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 all of these guys know what everybody's talking about, right? Everybody knows. They may say they don't know what the scuttlebutt is, but everybody knows the scuttlebutt. So they've heard plenty of times that Madge, as tough as nails, he's going to get them tough, blah, blah, blah. And that does not look like that is coming up. So there's a lot of questions that have to be asked about what they do. Matty Johns even said one thing that he noticed was that they tackled very strong in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game against Penrith. But he said that they looked tired. And I'm not saying, again, I just stood up for that boot camp mentality, right, that happened in the preseason. But there was a lot of talk about vomiting. Well, we know players vomit at times. But it was freaking strenuous. And if you remember, your Shedadamus said early in this season's podcast, I said, watch the legs of the Broncos towards the back half of the season be troubled. Now, I didn't think it was going to be in round 9, round 8, round 9, but I did say that they were going to feel this. They were going to feel it later in the season. So we've got to keep an eye on that, Shedheads. We really, really do, because that really shocked me when I heard Matty say they looked tired. And they did. If you go back and watch the game again, a lot of hands on hips. Brisbane just looked fatigued. And maybe it was the emotion that they extended last week with the beatdown of the Dogs. But they just really, for as pumped up as everybody is for Magic Round, you just would not expect the home side to look deflated that early in the game. So that's something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about another point that everyone has been talking about recently, and we really got that full bore, and that is Ezra Mann, the wild card of this season. Well, to me, what made it seem a little strange is when they panned with the camera during the Broncos-Panthers match, and they put the camera on Ezra Mann, who was sitting in the crowd, or sitting with his teammates, in the stands. And the amount of boos that came out when Ezra Mann was shown on the screen in the stadium really shocked me. And there was a little bit of look of shock on his face as well. Now, I know that Ezra made a huge mistake. I know that I think some of the anger towards him is that some people might think that he got off easy because of his name and because of his stature and that he's a footy player in Brisbane, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know if anybody was expecting that type of vitriol when he was shown in his own stadium. And that is what's right around the corner, because Ezra Mann is able for selection this coming round. Now it's come out that he's going to start in Queensland Cup and that he's not going to be with the boys to start off. But let's remember, right now with how inconsistent Ben Hunt has been looking in the six, you really don't have time to mess around. It's not like it's not like Brisbane's going on a 6-game winning streak or a 5 out of 6 like the Waz. They're struggling. And you're going to try to tell me that a dynamic playmaker like Ezra Mann would make a huge difference to that side? But now you have to look at what the backlash is going to be about putting this guy in your starting side. But I think we all know that players that have skill, players that are winners, players that have a God-given talent that some of us don't have, will find their way back on the field. So that comes to the point now of where will Ezra Mann slide into the starting rotation? It's going to be something in the spine, which we know. I think there's no way that you can't have Reno in the 7. As long as Adam Reynolds is healthy and with his kicking game, you're not moving him out of 7. So we already know Reynolds is a 7. You're not putting him back at fullback because Selwyn Cabo and then Bondi, or Blue Eyes as people call him, Reese Walsh, is going to be one of those two. One of those guys is going to be the fullback, right? So that leaves you 6 and 14. I myself think you play Ezra at 6. A lot of people don't give the guy respect, but a lot of people think that Hunt's going to go right into the dummy half position. I don't believe that. I like Billy Walters as the 9. I've always liked Billy Walters as the 9. I've liked Billy Walters since he was back with the West Tigers. So I'm keeping Billy Walters at 9, and I'm putting Ben Hunt at 14. Now, with him being at 14, you can bring him in to substitute with, in the dummy half position, or you can bring him in at one of the half positions if somebody goes down. But you have a guy that can be an incredible super sub, and it's not like Ben Hunt has shown that he's playing the type of footy where you would not let him start from the bench, because he has. He's been inconsistent this year. I know he's happy to be back in Queensland, but he has not played the most incredible footy. And then you think about this. You're going to have to play the guy. Ezra Mann is going to have to be back in the side because Billy Slater is going to be calling Ben Hunt to Origin camp. So there's not going to be any excuse that he will be in the side sooner than later. So there's a lot going on up in Brisbane. Again, it always seems like there's something that just really, 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 they just can't seem to get out of their own way. It's almost like They're like the rock star team, kind of like the Yankees over here in the States, that just has drama, or they have things, undercurrents, or all that type of stuff. Yeah, so that's my feeling on that. It's going to be really interesting going forward to see what happens up in Brisbane and if they can get this thing turned around. Now, the club's sitting 11th on the table right now. I don't know if you guys have paid attention, but that club would be the Chookies, the Sydney Roosters. And I know a lot of people around the game pretty much have put a stake in this club. They've lost so many people. JWH is over in England. Luke Keary is over in France. They've lost some huge members. Joey Manu, even though there's talk about him possibly coming back. Joseph Swahili is now playing rugby union. Those are huge players to lose for a side that was in contention last year and now has had to bring in a lot of youth and a lot of new combinations. But I will say this right now. This team is only 2 points out of the top 8. This team is playing some incredible football right now, with guys that a lot of us can't even pronounce their names properly. So I have to ask the question, has this been Trent Robinson's best coaching job since he's been with the Tricolors? And I have to almost say that yes, I think it is. I think it is, because all of the times that Robbo has led this team to prominence and the trophies and all that, he's just had some incredible rock stars to be able to coach. And like I said, if you want to drive fast, have a fast car, right? You don't want to do that in a 1954 Studebaker. You want a fast car. So he's had these type of pieces, and he's just always been able to just plug in new pieces, and we know Uncle Nick is always going to give him good looking cars, if you know what I mean. So yes, he's had more success, but what he's getting out of this club right now, I'm going to say it, I do think that is his best coaching job, because nobody saw this coming. A lot of people have him had the Chooks written off. The question is, can Robbo keep this stability going in the right direction? Because there's some major things that are on the horizon. A lot of scuttlebutt's going to be coming down, because more and more we're getting the talk that DCE, Daly Cherry Evans, is going to sign a 1-year deal to come to the Roosters. If that happens, you know what happens next. They're going to either lose Sandon Smith or Hugo Savala. And, you're talking about a Sandon Smith, a player that just got done winning the player of the match for Anzac, for the Anzac round. Looking incredible. Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, there wouldn't be this type of talk if Sandon Smith had played that type of footy from the beginning of the season. But it's the first time the guy has pretty much been handed the keys of the car like this. So why would you not expect him for it to take 6 or 7 rounds for him to really feel comfortable of when to attack, when to run, when to pass, all that. So he's going to lose probably one of those two guys. And I asked the question, why would you do that for a guy that you're probably only going to have for one season, for 1 year? To me, it is taking a neutral position. It's putting the car in neutral instead of keeping it in first or second gear. And, you can say what you want. You can say that, but the problem is, and a lot of guys were debating this, what that means is if you make that move, the Chooks have to win the premiership next year. They have to lift the trophy next year. They have to win the championship. Or it is a failure. It's a failure. Because for one season, you've now taken all of your youthful players, made them have to, either stand down or leave the club for a guy that's coming in for what reason? To win it all. So, yes, Robbo is doing an incredible coaching job right now, but there could be some real shallow water to navigate here, in the coming weeks, especially if it does come down that DCE has signed the deal and that he is coming to the tries. So we'll have to wait and see. But that still doesn't take away for the coaching job that Trent Robinson has done up to this point right now. And finally, to me, the thing that really stood out this last weekend, and I think all of us can agree, is the cinematography on the field from the Rover. Wow, some of those up-close shots, the sweat just flying off the players as they cut, they get tackled. The Rover, and here's the crazy thing: your Shedadamus isn't even watching it in 4K. I'm just watching it on a big screen, but it wasn't even 4K, and I was blown away by some of the shots that the Rover got and took. It definitely made you feel like you were right there as part of the action. But the NRL truthfully has to take a bow, because Magic Round, I think, turned out even better than a lot of us were expecting. And so, again, like I said, it is now bucket list material for your Shedadamus to be up in Vegas. And we're going to have to make that happen sooner than later. Now, as we go into the 40-20, what can you say? But well, Shedheads, it looks like we have another blockbuster on tap. And that's right, we do. We have the number one, Canterbury Bulldogs versus the number 2 Canberra Raiders. Now, all right, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. Shedheads, I'm always honest with you. But one of the reasons I'm gonna be honest with you and why I'm so excited is I don't have to wait. I don't have to stay up till 4:30 in the morning to watch this game, because this game is kicking off Super Saturday, which means your old Shedda gets to turn the television on at 11 o'clock to watch the pregame, and I get kickoff by midnight. Mrs. Shedadamus is going to be very happy. And I got to tell you, a happy Mrs. Shedadamus is a happy Shedadamus. So that's really exciting for me, because I'm going to be in peak power to watch a game that I think is going to be pretty damn magical all the way around. Because you have something that makes for good footy, and that is you have two contrasting styles. And when you have two contrasting styles of a team that attacks and attacks and attacks, and a team that can play in stellar defense and loves to get physical, that is all we want. That is what you want in your footy. Because it's which style is the better style and who performs that style the best. I love this team. I call them the Baby Greens. I am a huge fan of the Raiders this season. And when I met Ricky in Vegas at the luncheon the day before the matches kicked off, there was an energy about him. And I've not sat down and had coffee with Ricky or a beer, but he was so energized. And a lot of people thought that was just Vegas, right? It's just a Vegas glow. But I really now get it after watching the way they dismantled the Waz, that he knew what he had. He knew what he had. He's got a bunch of misfits that are a lot of cast-offs from other clubs that had given up on players. And he's turned them into something special because they all buy into that role. And Ricky now goes into that locker room and tells these guys, a lot of people picked you guys to finish either getting the wooden spoon or close to the bottom of the table. And he's got a bunch of guys that buy in that freaking amps them, that gets them fired up, that gets them that we've got a point to prove. And, with Seb Christ and, Xavier Savage and Kyle Weeks, they're just a exciting, Ethan Sanders. You could just go on and on and on and on. Papa Lee. It just, it really makes me excited because the football is fun. Hudson Young's playing some incredible footy. You could just keep going down the board how everyone has stepped up and exceeded expectation with what a lot of people thought they were going to be. So I'm excited to see Sticky navigate this team in such a big match. It's going to be incredible to watch that home fan base down at GIO Stadium get behind the Green Machine, or the Baby Greens, whichever one you want to call them. So the atmosphere is going to be off the charts. And then you get you get the Bulldogs. You get Cameron Serraldo bringing in a nucleus core of Penrith Panther players that kind of now have all bought into it. Don't forget, just 2 seasons ago, this club was under a little bit of fire because a player walked out saying that training was too tough. And a lot of people have forgotten that, but that was what was coming down of what Cameron Serraldo was trying to instill into this club, into this organization, is what they were going to have to put up with and what they were going to have to do if they wanted to really get to the top of the mountain. And now when you look at this club, the players that they have in place have all bought in. They are all playing it. They love their coach. And the results are speaking for themselves. And I said it a little bit ago, the loss to Brisbane might be the best thing that could have happened to this club, because the keen-eye focus that they probably did not have is back. And so this game is just, it's going to be something special, Shedheads. And for all of us over here in the Divided States, we're going to be able to watch it and really still have all of our how should you say, all of our minds are still going to be in the right place instead of thinking about our heads hitting the pillow. And then, it's just going to be some good stuff. And I think, again, we have a chance for this to be one of those matches 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks from now that we're still talking about. So I'm going to give you my pick in a little bit here, but be excited. Like I said, it's going to be something special. Now, we can't go a week when we talk in the 40-20 without bringing up some type of disenchanted player or player on the move or, somebody who might have a hangnail problem. Well, we've got it again. Now, the crazy thing is, this is all going from just one club, and that is the Sydney Roosters, because the Chooks have, and it kind of blows me away to say this, I know they rested him, they sat him last week because they wanted him to concentrate on his tackles or whatever, his defense. But they have given Dom Young the permission to negotiate a deal at a new club and for an immediate release from his contract to actually play this season for another organization. And this really, I remember when the Chooks made the big play to get Dom Young out of Newcastle. He is a freak. The guy's 6'5", 6'6". He's an Adonis of a player. When you look at him, he's just, a mountain of danger and speed. But with that being said, you can't fit a shape into the wrong size shape, and maybe that's what happened with Dom Young. Not everybody loves Sydney. And he is a quiet individual. He's not very loud. He doesn't like a lot of attention. So maybe that has something to do with it. But I will tell you right now, there's been whispers, there's been rumor that since he's from the UK, that some Super League clubs might be trying to approach him about coming back over to the Super League. But to me, that would be the wrong direction. This guy has proven he's played 50 games or so, and he's almost scored 50 tries. So he's almost a try-a-game scorer. The other team that's now really making I guess you would say a push, and you would wonder if this is Dom Young telling his agent where he wouldn't mind going back to, is the Newcastle Knights. Now, the funny thing about Newcastle is Newcastle has all the house money in this because, like Newcastle has said, we're not here to clear up your problem, Chookies. And if you want Dom Young to get off your books, to get DCN in or whatever you're trying to do, we are not overpaying. And we are not going to give you more money than we think you should. And so they're playing hardball right now with the Chooks. I do think that that the Roosters will negotiate. I think the Roosters will try to make the deal happen because That's too much money for a guy that's just going to be sitting on the bench or down, and they just can't do it. They just can't. So it'll be interesting because a lot of people think that the boys of the 100 would love to have him back on the field for Newcastle by round 11. So this is going to be something to monitor and something to watch because I think Dom Young is too good of a player to go back to England at this current time or to the UK or whatever you want to say. And I think he would be perfect to come back into that side in Newcastle. Now, the other player we kind of knew, and that is the hectic cheese, Brandon Smith. Smithy has been, he's already signed a deal to go to the Rabbitohs next season. And there had been talk at the beginning of the beginning of the season that would he get an early release from the Chooks to go to South Sydney early. And a lot of people totally downplayed that because no deal would ever happen between the Chooks and the Roosters. Come on, the Book of Feuds. That couldn't happen. It couldn't happen. But it looks like it. And it looks like it's something that is going to happen. It looks like we've seen Brandon Smith play his last game in a Tricolors jersey. And right now they're saying it's about $40,000 is actually separating the two sides from making the deal. Now the problem is $40,000 is like Evel Knievel jumping over Snake Canyon when it comes to these two teams coming to an agreement. We know there's disdain. We know both sides really hate each other. It is kind of funny how players switch from one color jersey to the other, and I think that's fascinating. But it happens quite frequently if you think about it. But the hectic cheese is still 6 weeks away from ever taking the field. He's still recovering from that knee injury, so. Even if this deal got signed, I don't know, before the next time we do this podcast, he's still not going to be, back on the field for another 6 weeks. So it's not like, to me, Brandon Smith is going to help the Bunnies with a huge run to the finals. Because I think by the time Brandon Smith comes back, we're going to know the teams that are going to be close to finals or teams that are going to be knocking on the door to get into the 8. And that's going to really hurt the Bunnies. And it makes me kind of question why they're pushing to get Brandon Smith in there so early. I don't know if they want him to just learn the system for next season more than anything. But as we always say, the Book of Feuds is always going to give us a new chapter. And now the Brandon Hectic Cheese saga is the new chapter. Do they get the Wombat out before the season, or don't they? So, again, things are going to be stories that we follow on here on Outside the Sheds, and I know that you will follow at home. Now, as we go into round 10 in our picks, we've got some stellar games. And I think this game that kicks off the round, in a matter of hours, the Dolphins versus the Eels, could really be an exciting and fun game to watch. Mitchell Moses is going to want to be playing some top-notch footy because he wants to get that origin selection. And the Dolphins have to stop that slide. They cannot keep yo-yoing like they have been. So they want to get back in the win column. So I think that it's just a perfect scenario for us to have a really, really good game. But because of that, I am still going to take the Dolphins. I think that they are the better side and the better club. The only, like I said, wild card is Mitchell Moses because you saw what he did against the West Tigers for the Eels. But, yes, I'm taking the Dolphins to kick off round 10 with a victory. Friday night, we've got the Titans versus the Knights with the crazy stuff going on with David Fafita, which we did not go in detail with, Shedheads, because there's still so much smoke. I can't even see the full car accident. I know he's been sent down to Queensland Cup, and it looked like he didn't want to be there. Now they have him on the sidelines saying there might be an ankle injury. So we're just standing him down right now. There's a lot that hasn't come out yet. So we will cover that story when we know a little bit more. But I don't want to blow smoke. I want more facts of what's going on. But I think because of that backdrop, I'm definitely going with a Newcastle Knights victory. For one, it's in the Hunter. And two, like I said, they just don't have all of that smoke and all that fire that's going on behind the scenes. So we got Newcastle over the Titans. Broncos versus the Bunnies. Huge inclusions this week. Latrell Mitchell is back. Humphreys is back in the halves. So you would think that this could be a buoying effect. And you know what? I think it's that big of an effect. I am taking the Bunnies to upset the Broncos. You know, you got Clint Eastwood, and you know he's got some, how do I say this nicely? He's got a little disdain for the Brisbane Broncos. So you know that this team will be up to play strong for old Clint. So that's going to be a good game and a fun game to watch. But I've got the Bunnies upsetting the Broncos. Saturday, Bulldogs versus the Raiders to kick it off. Midnight. I can't believe I'm saying midnight for such a big game. But I went on a diatribe just a few minutes ago. I'm taking the Baby Greens. They're down in milk country. There's no reason not to take them. There's no Willow, listen to me. Willow, we're going Baby Greens. So we've got the Raiders over the Dogs to kick off Saturday. Warriors versus the Dragons. You know, I think the Dragons are going to put up a little bit of a fight. They're at home. But I love the footy that the Waz are playing right now. I love the passion this team is playing with right now. I've said they've won 5 out of 6. They've learned the chemistry and the dynamic this team has. I'm going with the Waz. I think they're going to get the victory. And it could be a sound victory too. Then to close out Super Saturday, Panthers versus the Cowboys. Woo! I think this game could be a lot of fun. And I think because the attacking football that we're going to watch, it's going to make it a game that we're going to have some moments to talk about next week. But even with that being said, and how great of football the Cows have now kind of rounded into form and are playing, I'm going with Penrith. The look in the eye that I saw from Cleary, Edwards needing that one jersey for State of Origin, Talangi, the way he's playing, I'm going with the Panthers. I think the champ makes it 2 in a row, and they start chopping wood to get back into that 8. So we got the Panthers closing out Super Saturday. Sunday, Tigers versus the Storm. The Tigers going down to Melbourne. Yeah, I know everybody thinks it's going to be an exciting game, but bellyache and the anger the bellyache had after what happened up at Magic Round, I would not want to be a team playing the Storm this week. And I think Melbourne is going to put on a little bit of a display. I hope not. I hope the Tigers can keep it close and that we get a real nail-biting game. But I think the Storm are going to have a point to prove, and it could get nasty. So I'm going with Melbourne over the Tigers. And then finally, to close out round 10, Sharkies versus the Seagulls. I know Turbo's back. Some big inclusions for Manly. But there's something about the way Nico played in Magic Round. And I know Nico knows he's not going to get a 6 or 7 jersey with the Blues. That time is gone and it's over. But I think Nico knows what time of year it is. And I think he wants to show that he is still a really incredible footy player, especially when he plays with confidence. And I think, again, I'm going to put my name on it. Nico has an incredible game, and the Sharkies beat the Sea Eagles at Fortress Brookvale. I've got it. I'm taking the Sharks. So the picks for round 10, Dolphins, Knights, Bunnies, Raiders, Waz, Panthers, Storm, and the Sharkies to close it out. Now, my gun of the round, you had Kraz with his treble. You had so many players getting doubles and triples for this last week at Magic Round. But I'm going with a guy that, to me, everybody said to give up on after round one, and that is Luke Metcalf. Luke Metcalf has grabbed that number 7 jersey, and he's made it his own. And he proved it again during Magic Round with 2 tries, 4 for 5 on conversions, 1 penalty goal, 162 running meters, 2 line breaks, 2 line break assists, 7 tackle breaks, 17 tackles made, and 311 kicking meters. You know, again, for a gentleman, young man that everybody is somewhat given up on, for a young man to follow after a legend like Sean Johnson, you just have to be happy for him. And the confidence that he's starting to show more and more and more is that he's feeling comfortable in that jersey. He's feeling comfortable in that 7 jersey. And I think when you get a guy that has that type of talent and it can be comfortable, I don't even think we've seen the best of Luke Metcalf yet in that 7 jersey. So that is my gun of the round. Shedheads. First off, I want to give a shout out to Willow. Heal up, my friend. He is a huge shedhead of this show. And when I know that we have members of this family that are not feeling the best or might have had an injury or an operation, we want to always say we're thinking about you here because you guys are what make this show run. It's definitely not my voice this week, is it? But heal up, my friend, and send me a message of how your recovery is going. But Shedheads, thank you for putting up with these pearly pipes that I brought to the table this week. But this has been your Shedadamus. But like I always tell you, look after yourselves, look after your voices, stay out of trouble, don't get caught. But until next week, see ya.
And that was another fantastic episode of Outside the Sheds with Corey Jackson, talking all things NRL and all things sports. So please remember to smash the subscribe button and share this with your family and friends and show them what Australian sport is all about.